Hi, my name is Bob Brooks, and welcome to the Prudent Money Channel. You know, there is a lot of financial stress and anxiety about money out there today. There's a lot of reasons why. I mean, think about high consumer credit card debt. Think about lower wages, not enough money coming in. Think about too many bills. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and these are the reasons that people assign to their financial stress. But I got to tell you, those are symptoms of the real problem. The real problem is, I've gathered this over 2 decades of working with people, is that people don't have a plan. They're unaware of their financial situation. Let me give you a couple of examples. A person who has a lot of debt, they'll come into my office, sit down, want to know some solutions. First thing out of their mouth is, and it's just very stressful conversation. I'm going to be in this debt for 15 to 20 years. It's going to delay everything. It's going to take me forever to get out of debt. Or they're just convinced they'll never get out of debt. And so I start to ask the questions. What's your interest rate? What's your payment? What's your balance? And the most important question, when's your payoff date? And they just look at me with a blank stare because they don't know the information. They don't have a plan. And so I go through the process of putting a plan together for them, show them that it's not going to take 15 to 20 years. It's going to take 3 to 4 years. And now they have hope. And then we start to build a spending plan to show them where they're going to get that money to pay extra to pay that debt off. And they leave the office with hope because they've got a plan. And take the person who wants to retire. They come into my office and they say, I'm never going to retire. And I'll ask the question, how do you know you're not going to retire? It just feels like I'm never going to retire. And what ends up happening is it's that negative interpretation of your situation because you don't have a plan. You don't know really what shape or situation you're in. And what I've found, no matter where you are in your life when it comes to retirement, we can create some type of a plan. But having a plan, having a knowing of what's going on decreases your financial stress. In a lot of cases, eliminates it. But here's the problem, is there is a comfort in not knowing. What you don't know won't hurt you. There's a lot of truth to that, but there's a comfort in not knowing. And facing your fears a lot of times is more painful than the stress. This funny thing about the stress, we're used to it. It's kind of an old friend. We can deal with it. We carry it around with us. But, maybe knowing really what our situation is, that might be a little bit more painful. So we kind of stops us dead in our tracks. Today, what I want to talk about is the downsides to not having a plan, and talk about what really could be propelling your stress and creating your stress, and showing you that there's maybe a way out of that and decreasing it. Let's start with the first one. Downsides to not having a plan, a not working mindset, always focusing on the negative. There's a dangerous cycle when it comes to negativity. You interpret your situation as being negative, and then you start to develop that negative mindset. And here's the thing about financial stress. It's so very powerful that it starts to go into other areas of your life, and it's like a cancer. It starts to envelop, take control of your entire life, and then everything's negative. There's a person that I know that she interprets everything from a negative standpoint, and I'll start to ask them details about their financial situation, and they just don't know the details because they don't have a plan. But it comes back down to the problem with negativity is that it starts into a loop that you start to develop more and more negative beliefs. And when you start to expect negative things to happen, the subconscious mind's a wonderful thing. It brings it to you. So you got to break that loop. But this is what not having a plan, you start interpreting everything as negative. Another downside to not having a plan, living in a state of denial. And I can illustrate this with the person with credit card debt. They start out with a credit card, maybe they have $30,000 credit limit, and they start to charge on it. And they start to charge some more, and they start getting comfortable building that credit card balance up. And they think, this is not going to be a problem. I'll pay it off in a couple of years, no big deal, but they keep adding to it. Their comfort level starts to expand with that credit card. Next thing you know, they're at $30,000. Their credit limit's at $30,000. They're maxed out. They go get another credit card, still kind of in a state of denial that this is no big deal. And then they wake up with a debt crisis. And what I've always said about debt is that debt is not a problem until it's a problem. When it becomes a problem, it's an overnight nightmare. You wake up and you go, look what I've done. I can't believe this. Same thing could happen with investments. You're stuck in the wrong investment strategy. You're losing money, and you're in denial that you really need to make some changes, but you have hope that it's just all going to come back when you really should make some changes. So this living in state of denial, and you start to add some of that negative loop with it, will keep you locked in the wrong strategy, in the wrong situation. Downsides to not having a plan, high probability of creating debt. and I see this a lot, is that and I'll talk about intentional and non-intentional spending here in just a second, but we spend money kind of hoping at the end of the day that there's enough money left in the bank account to follow expenses. If you do that, you know who you are. It's a dangerous spending pattern. But what ends up happening is that you get to the final week and you go, wait a minute, I've got 2 or 3 bills left and I have no money. What am I going to do? You're going to go to the credit card. And it's called survival by the credit card. In fact, today, if you look at credit card balances, we are almost at record levels of consumer credit card debt again. The last time we did that was right before the financial crisis. And if you look at consumer spending, it does not support the fact that we've had these high credit card balances, which means it looks like people are surviving on credit cards again. Not a good situation, but that is really how debt is created. If you don't have enough money, a lot of times it just goes on the card, and a good spending plan eliminates that problem. Downsides to not having a plan: non-intentional spending. It's real interesting that where you spend your money, where your money flows to, what you use it for is what you value. And if you look at your credit card statements, if you look at your bank accounts, and you total up all your spending, you categorize it, that's what you value. And for a lot of people, entertainment and a lot of people, eating out is kind of up there in the hierarchy of their values. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's what you value. Your values are your values. But it might be that you want to value something higher. And that's what I talk about: intentional spending versus non-intentional spending. When our spending is broken up into 2 categories, there's discretionary and non-discretionary. Non-discretionary spending is what we have to pay for month in, month out. If you don't pay for it, someone takes something away from you. The discretionary spending is what's left over. And a lot of times we spend non-intentionally, and we spend on what feels good: eating out, pleasures, entertainment, whatever it might be. Now, if you do put together a plan, and you do a hierarchy of your values, you might say, you know what, I love to eat out, but I want to get out of debt more than anything. So I'm going to move this up the hierarchy, and I'm going to move the emphasis on eating out and entertainment down below. And now you're intentionally spending money based on your hierarchy of values, but you can't get there without a plan. Downsides to not having a plan: you are more than likely wasting money. I use this illustration, and it's my own personal story, which is a little bit embarrassing because I should know better, right? And I have a spending plan. Now, my spending plan is kind of a global spending plan. To give you an example, we put everything on American Express and pay American Express off. So on the American Express card, I know just about what I'm spending. So if I'm getting lazy, what I'll do, I'll see that, this amount was spent on the American Express and is due. That's about what I spend, so I'm okay. What I should be doing is doing a deeper dive into the details, see where all that money is going on the American Express, and then even dive deeper into things like the AT&T cell phone bill that is always confusing and typically has mistakes on it, by the way, that you always want to make sure that it doesn't. And so I decided this year that, I'm going to do a deeper dive. I'm going to change up my system. I want to get a lot more organized with my spending. And so I went in and I discovered that I've been paying 12 months of internet when I canceled it 12 months ago. So I wasted all that money and finally canceled. Of course, they didn't give me any of that money back. I could have sworn I called them, but anyway, that's beside the point. But anyway, a lot of times I think that we spend money and we go through the process of just paying the bills when we're wasting money on subscriptions that we cancel, subscriptions we don't even look at, that we don't even use anymore. You name it. I went through my corporate spending at my company and found a lot of things that needed to be done differently because I wasn't doing a deeper dive. But that's what, probably out of any of the plans we talk about today, the spending plan is the most important, and it's the one most people don't have. Downsides to not having a plan: creates stress. You have no sense of control. Obviously, this is what we're talking about by not having stress. But one of the things I wanted to point out is that if you have a plan, you have a sense of control. Because at the end of the day, you can control your spending. You can control where the money goes. And it gives you, that plan gives you that sense of control by reducing that stress. Downsides to not having a plan: places more stress on your marriage. I see this more often than not, is that there's one spouse, and it could be the husband or the wife, one spouse taking care of all the bills, taking on all the stress, not communicating with the other the other spouse, and that other spouse really doesn't have a clue as to what's going on, and so he or she innocently will go out and spend money, comes back, and that the spouse who takes care of everything goes, "Why'd you spend that money?" and creates all of this stress when they're not on the same plan and not on a spending plan. And the fact that they're not on a spending plan creates a tremendous amount of stress anyway on the person who's taking care of it, much less the person who just really doesn't know what's going on. It decreases stress even in a marriage. So what's the biggest challenge with a plan? Well, quite frankly, it's getting started. And it goes back to there's kind of comfort with that stress level that you're used to dealing with. There's a little bit of comfort in not knowing. And I've worked with people, and this was just the other day, I was working with somebody where we set up a plan. I spelled it all out. I said, okay, let's get started. You have to take the first step, though. And the sense of hesitancy, and that comes from a lot of different fears, maybe a lot of different regret. But it's so very important to get started and just to know that this is going to decrease the financial stress in your life. Now, the first thing that you got to do is you have to create a mindset. And really, this teaching video is just about identifying the real cause of financial stress. There's another video, I Don't Believe in Budgets, that you can go check out that can show you how to do it from step by step by step. But this is about creating a mindset. And the first thing, you got to know it's a process. Anytime I talk to people about creating especially a spending plan, or maybe even getting out of a debt reduction plan, I tell them that it's a process. It's going to take time. You're going to have to get used to the details, working out the system, the process. So you got to show yourself some grace. You got to be easy on yourself, but you've got to be diligent. You got to be committed to it. And it's going to take maybe 3 or 4 months until you have a good, regular system going that's easy to use. The second is find the system that works for you. There's a lot of sophisticated software systems out there. And when someone asks me, what do I use to organize my spending plan, I tell them, and they're really surprised, I use an Excel spreadsheet. And I do that because it forces me to dive into the details. It forces me to take the numbers off the sheet and put it in the spreadsheet. It takes a lot of time to do it, but it puts me more in touch with what I'm spending and more in touch with the details. What I found with the software systems is that it's easy to go through the motions. You set it up, it runs on autopilot, you push a button, you download things, it categorizes, you print out a report. And what I found myself doing is just flipping through the report, check the boxes, I did my spending plan, but not once again diving into the details. So the Excel spreadsheet works for me. In fact, I've got a Excel spreadsheet I'm happy to send to you. You just go to send me an email at bob@prudentmoney.com, bob@prudentmoney.com, and I'll send you a free copy of it, and you can fill it in for yourself. Commit to a time each week. Your spending plan will fail miserably if you don't commit to a time. A time that you set maybe it's every Sunday afternoon, maybe it's every Friday, whenever it is, that you're going to sit down for 30 to 45 minutes. At first, what's great is that the more you do it, the better you get at it, the less time it takes. But commit to 30 to 45 minutes to stay organized. You can't let a week go by, 2 weeks go by, then you find yourself behind. And this is a killer of spending plans, is that you get behind a month and you go, oh, I can't get this done. And so you just don't do it anymore. But you've got to commit to a time and make sure that you do it every week. Know thyself. And this is, excuse me, this is very important because we all have our tendencies that get in the way. We all have our roadblocks that get in the way. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's not being detailed enough. I can be detailed all day with people I work with, but when I get home, I'm tired of being detailed. So I have to force myself to be detailed, which is why I changed my spending pattern, my spending plan. But know yourself and know your tendencies. And when you see yourself starting to lay back into your tendencies and do things that are going to get in the way, correct yourself and get going. This is also a great personal growth strategy to clear up some of those tendencies. Start changing your beliefs. This is extremely important, and it's going to be a challenge if you've been in a negative loop. But you've got to change your beliefs. You've got to change your expectations. You've got to put a positive spin on them. Start writing down some of the conversations we all have in our minds, that doubt that pops up in your mind, and don't settle for it. Here's the great thing about the subconscious mind. It believes anything you tell it. And so whatever you tell your subconscious mind over and over and over again, and by the way, you can only hold either a a positive belief or a negative belief at one time. You can't hold both. So if you're feeding positive beliefs and positive expectations into your subconscious mind, you'll start to see dramatic shifts. But it really is pretty tough to have a negative outlook, a negativity loop going when you're trying to plan for the future and create a positive future. Start changing your beliefs. Don't settle for negativity anymore. I mean, it's just imperative. I mean, it's all kind of tied together. But if you stay in that negative loop, it's going to be a roadblock. It's going to get in the way. Now, when we talk about planning, there's a lot of different plans. There's a plan to get out of debt. Maybe there's a plan to fund college. Maybe there's a plan for retirement, a spending plan. Out of all of them, if you don't have a solid spending plan, which most people don't, that's going to be critical to laying a foundation, because with a solid spending plan, you're going to be able to determine where that money's going to come from. You know, we've got the discretionary money issue, where it's going to go from, that spending hierarchy of values, and how you're going to use it. So the plan to reach your goals, very important to do. The spending plan, most important. And if you want more information, go to I Don't Believe in Budgets. That's a teaching course, one of the very first ones that I did, because I think it's the most important. It talks about the spending plan and how to organize your spending and how to get a good, solid plan established. Here's the bottom line. There's so many people today that are living in financial stress, and they don't need to be. I've talked to many people through the years, and I watch them stress about things. And then when they realize, we start to develop the plan and understand where they're going and what they have to do, they take back control and get rid of that financial stress once and for all.